Edge of Eternities, Magic's first standard legal voyage into the final frontier, tells its story across more than 250 brand new cards. Spaceships, aliens, esoteric religions, corgis, oh, who's a good doggo, nutrition bars, and battles of galactic proportions. There is a galaxy's worth of content in this set, and yet, surprisingly, a very small pool of legends to choose as commander. Edge of Eternities will have not one, but two Commander Precon decks hitting shelves soon, but what other legendary builds are there within the main set? In this video, we will explore my favorite new commanders from Edge of Eternities. I picked 5 of them, well, technically 6 of my favorite commanders from Edge of Eternities, but what are my picks for the best new commanders? Join me and find out as we boldly build what no one has ever built before. But first, we can begin immediately because this video is brought to you without any interruptions thanks to Wizards of the Coast. I know, I'm just as surprised as you all are. Thank you for sponsoring this video so that, without any delays, we can warp right into the action. First, let's talk about spacecraft. Wizards of the Coast recently announced that starting with Edge of Eternities, legendary vehicles and spacecraft are both legal options to be your commander. While more options when deck building is exciting, most of us were left wondering, what impact on the format will this actually have? Well, seeing as the Edge of Eternities main set only gave us 3 options to pick from, I'd say that those of you worried about spacecrafts taking over your local game store need not fret. This lack of quantity doesn't mean a lack of quality, though, and I'd like to begin by looking at one standout spacecraft. The Cervondom is a legendary spacecraft for 1 generic and 2 white mana that has an Enters effect. Search your library for a legendary creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. It has the new Station ability, and at 7 charge counters, it becomes a 5/5 flyer with other tapped legendary creatures you control have indestructible. Deck building while being in mono white is restrictive, yes, but the power of having a tutor in the command zone is anything but. There are a ton of mono white legendary creatures that answer many of the usual problems you'd find in a game of Commander. For example, did your opponent cast their Prosh, Skyraider of Kur? Tutor for an Elish Norn Grand Cenobite and burn those tokens to the ground. Is an onboard Parallel Lives making your life miserable? Just grab a Lauren of the Third Path and make your problems fade away. Is your opponent so much as looking at their graveyard? Well then send that yard straight to jail with Tomek, Distinguished Advocist. Get spiteful with it. Grab Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, to muck up a storm deck. Grab Kataki, War's Wage, and tax the artifact player into the dirt. Search up Redain, God of the Worthy, and cast its backside to deactivate any pingers. Find Hokori, Dustdrinker, and... what'd you do? Well, maybe not that one. We all agree that grabbing an answer to a threat is strong, but Commander is a 4-player game. We'll need that search as much as we can get it. This card loves blink spells. Too bad there aren't any in white. Oh, wait, there are! Not only can you tutor for Philia, Exuberant Shepherd, you can use it to blink your commander and trigger that Enters effect again and again. Be sure to include cards that let you blink non-creature permanents, because we will rarely have our commanders stationed up enough to be a creature. While the initial offering of spacecraft may be a little underwhelming, spacecraft are a cool and interesting design space that can be explored later. Much later. Okay, let's start our real list with a mono-black commander with the brand new Void mechanic. Alpha Royale Stone Chosen is a 3/3 human cleric for 3 generic and 2 black mana. Don't let that stat line fool you though. Alpha Royale packs a galactic punch. Whenever Alpha Royale attacks, if Void is active, the defending player loses half their life, rounded up. In other words, you swing at your opponent who's still at 40 life, and they'll drop all the way down to 20. Opposing life gain players soaring out of reach, Alpha Royale will bring their life total crashing back to Earth. Oh, and if your opponents want to remove Alpha Royale, they'll need to be ready to pay a steep price. Ward cost requires them to discard a card at random. Alpha Royale is an awesome mono-black commander for players who love to hit hard and show no mercy. To make the most of this commander, you'll want to keep Void active and keep attacking whenever possible. Load up on single target removal like Feed the Swarm, Infernal Grasp, and Go for the Throat, as these spells both clear the way for Alpha Royale to attack and activate his Void ability. Treasure tokens also activate Void and are the primary source of ramp in many black decks. Black market connections, therefore, is invaluable for keeping the treasure flowing. Inevitably, someone at the table will decide discarding a card at random is less painful than losing half their life. But what if you make them pay that cost twice? Cards like Kaya's Ghost Form, Not Dead After All, and Malakir Rebirth typically go 1-for-1 with your opponent's single target removal. But with Alpha Royale here, that math changes. After demonstrating that you have these cards in your deck, your opponents have to consider that they might be spending 2 cards without removing Alpha Royale. Finally, we'll want to make the most of Alpha Royale's trigger. Though Alpha Royale's ability on its face smacks only a single opponent for all that damage, equipping it with a Helm of the Host will allow you to spread all that love around the galaxy and the table each time you enter combat. And if you really want to accelerate the table's approach towards Inevita, how about sticking a Bloodletter of Alkazatz, Wound Reflection, or Archfiend of Despair on the table? All 3 of these cards turn Alpha Royale's attack trigger into a literal one-hit kill. Next on our list is an Edge of Eternities legend who may not directly reference any of the new set mechanics, but is more than capable of capitalizing on mechanics new and old. Can you guess which Orzhov All-Star lands the number 4 spot on our top 5? If you guessed Cervondom, Sunstar Exemplar, then you are correct. This card is a menace for more reasons than literally having the keyword menace. For 1 white and 1 black mana, you get a 2/2 with Vigilance and Menace that says, whenever another creature you control dies or is put into exile, put a +1/+1 counter on Cervondom and you gain 1 life. And when Cervondom dies or is put into exile while its power is 4 or greater, destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent. Cervondom blends the playstyles of Voltron, Aristocrats, Sacrifice, and Flicker into one lean, mean Orzhov machine. There is no shortage of ways you can build this commander, but let's highlight some of the most useful cards to pair with it. First, let's talk about the Sacrifice element to Vondam. Orzhov Sac is nothing new. There are countless ways to get that engine going, and having a payoff in the command zone is huge. With Yawgmoth and any 2 undying creatures on the field with Cervondom, you can draw literally your entire deck. You do this by sacrificing 1 creature with Yawg, and then when it returns with Undying, you sacrifice the other undying creature. But this time you use Yawg to give the first undying creature a -1/-1 counter, which cancels out its +1/+1 counter from Undying. Normally you can repeat this for as much life as you can afford, but thanks to Cervondom, you get a life back every time you sack a creature, so you can actually do this for as many cards as you have in your deck. Even better, if you make one of those creatures Geralf's Messenger, then you are dealing 2 damage to an opponent each time you do the Yawg loop. Finally, we did it! We made Yawgmoth powerful! All jokes aside, Vondam is a great sacrifice strategy enabler to exist in your command zone for a measly 2 mana. But the truly interesting thing about it is that these triggers don't only occur when a creature dies. No. Vondam also triggers when a creature is exiled. In fact, Vondam's second ability, which destroys non-land permanents, can also trigger when Vondam itself is exiled. With powerful flicker effects like Philia, Ephemerate, and Flicker Wisp, we are able to blink Vondam in and out of existence, which makes excellent use of its ability to destroy non-land permanents. All you have to do is get a couple counters on it, easily accomplished thanks to its first paragraph of text, and then exile it to remove any non-land permanent you want. Someone goes to remove your commander? Oops, sorry. I'll just ephemerate it to fizzle your spell. And while I'm at it, go ahead and destroy your commander instead. 1 pesky blocker in the way? I'll just flicker my Vondam when Philia attacks and destroy it before blockers. Now the way is clear for me to win the way Garfield intended, by beating up my opponent with a small dog. Our next commander brings a delicious deconstruction of Boros abilities. Familiar, comfort, fare, elevated for the refined palate. Our number 3 commander is, wait, you're telling me a lobster fried this rice? Ragost, Deft Gastronaut, is a 2/2 lobster citizen for 1 red and a white mana. It makes all your artifacts foods in addition to their other types, and gives them the classic food ability. For 1 mana, you can tap Ragost and sacrifice a food to deal 3 damage to each opponent. And at the beginning of each end step, if you gained life this turn, untap Ragost. The game plan here is very fun and very silly. Gain life to untap Ragost, then activate it on each of everyone's turns to send 3 damage to all your opponent's faces. I like to imagine he's throwing hot food in rude customers' faces, and every time you eat, it feels better enough to untap, only for it to do it all over again on the next turn. Ragost is an open-ended commander, but there are a few particular cards I recommend running in its 99. First, you'll want to stock the kitchen with cheap artifacts that get most of their value when they enter or exit. Ichor Wellspring, Golden Egg, and Prophetic Prism are 3 equally edible cards that draw you cards as you serve them up. And Nimblewright Schematic, Servo Schematic, and Prize Statue all provide you with 3 artifacts with which to activate Ragost with. Weapons Manufacturing is a powerful card from Edge of Eternities that creates munition tokens whenever non-token artifacts enter play. These munition tokens deal 2 damage to any target when they leave play, which means anytime Ragost sacrifices one of them to its ability, that's an extra 2 damage pointed anywhere you'd like. Similarly, Fareed, Enterprising Salvager, makes a scrap token whenever a non-token artifact leaves play. While scrap tokens do nothing on their own, they are fine fodder for Ragost's ability. Fareed can also goad creatures by sacrificing artifacts in case you need to divert a few angry customers. You'll definitely want to include Hylia, Guided by Light from Edge of Eternities, as it makes you gain life whenever a creature or artifact enters, guaranteeing you a Ragost untap. Oh, and if you gain 3 life on your turn, say by eating some delicious food, it draws you a card on your end step. Whoa, talk about a rockin' lobster! Electric guitar noise. Our number 2 pick for Best Commander from Edge of Eternities provides a new twist on an iconic red effect. If you want to hit your opponents hard and fast with huge creatures, well, let's take a look. Tanuk, Steadfast Second, is a 3/5 Kavu pilot for 2 generic and 2 red mana. It gives all your red creatures and artifacts warp for 2 and a red. Warp is an alternate casting cost that allows a permanent to enter play for a turn before getting exiled at the end step to be cast later for its full mana cost. It also grants other creatures you control haste, meaning all your warped creatures will get an attack in before they get sent back to exile. Essentially, Tanuk is a sneak attack on a stick for artifacts and red creatures. That color restriction isn't a problem though, since Tanuk is a mono-red commander anyway. To make the most of Tanuk, fill your deck with big creatures that it can cheat into play for a turn for 3 mana. Itali, Primal Storm for instance, loves entering play at warp speed and getting a quick attack in before your opponents understand what hit them. Ancient Copper Dragon is another one, generating you an average of 10 treasures for the low cost of that 3 mana warp. You can warp in non-creature artifacts too, by the way. While most of the artifacts you'll want to warp in also happen to be creatures, Blightsteel Colossus, there are a couple of options in this space. Warp in a Portal to Phyrexia for a quick board clear, then have it looming in exile as a late game threat. Warp in the Might Stone and Weak Stone, get whichever ETB looks best at the time, then tap it to refund 2/3 of the mana cost you spent to cast it. Tanuk gives all your creatures haste, not just the ones you warp. So the token made by Hexplate Wallbreaker's Formiridin trigger will also be able to attack. Warp it in alongside another big creature and go to town with your extra combat phase. You want to get really crazy? I mean really crazy? Since warp is a casting cost, you can pay 3 mana to cast Cityscape Leveler, getting its cast trigger, and then attack with it to get another trigger, destroying 2 non-land permanents for 3 mana and bopping someone for 8 trampling damage. Your opponents are gonna love you. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for, the number 1 new commander from Edge of Eternities has to be one of the most interesting and flavorfully exciting Boros commanders we've ever covered. Give it up for Sammy, Wildcat Captain. 6 mana may seem like a lot, but that cost is immediately reduced when you consider the powerful cost-reducing ability of this rogue artificer. For 4, a red and a white, you get a 4/4 with double strike and vigilance, but most importantly, all of your spells get affinity for artifacts. Oh my goodness! For those not in the know, this means each of your spells cost 1 generic mana less for each artifact you have in play. And if you'd really like to see the power of Affinity, check out this video from me playing the modern Affinity deck against Jim Davis here. But for now, let's talk about all the best ways to utilize Sammy. First things first, let's talk about the various artifacts we want to get into play before getting Sammy out. Good old mana rock. Nothing beats that. Mana rocks are already one of the strongest things you can play in Commander. Mana ramp, mana fixing, removing hand size restrictions. These cards can do it all. I mean, there is a reason Commander is called the Soul Ring format, but Sammy makes mana rocks even better, as each mana rock now effectively counts as an additional mana source. This is because they already tap for one or more mana, but the affinity clause from Sammy means that just by existing on the board, they are discounting your spells by an additional mana. Now that's what I call mana ramp. But wait, aren't there some other artifact mana sources that can help speed things along? Oh yeah, artifact lands. Just like with the mana rocks from before, these lands generating mana on their own and being an artifact means they basically count as 2 lands whenever we have a Sammy out. Take that, Temple of the False God. Who's the soul land now? But all of these artifact lands and mana rocks are really just the vegetables that you are forced to eat before dessert. They are important and healthy for your deck, but let's get to the fun stuff now. Let's get to the broken stuff in this card. What I find so interesting about Sammy is it's a Boros commander that really pushes you towards a colorless build due to the fact that Affinity only reduces the generic mana cost, and not any of the specific colored costs of your cards. A couple of cheap enablers for this deck that really pack some punch are Liberator, Urza's Battlethopter, and Skittering Cicada. Both of these cards accomplish a similar goal. They let you cast your colorless spells at instant speed, and they both happen to grow more powerful as you do so. The Battlethopter even doubles as an artifact to help discount your spells even further. Ragost is a great addition to our deck because it gives all of our creature spells a merge. This means we can reduce their cost even further by sacrificing a creature and using its mana value towards the cost of the spell we are casting. This lets us start to chain creatures where we play one, get its ETB effect, sacrifice it to play another, get its on-death trigger, and repeat until we run out of free spells to cast. But Professor, you're probably saying, my spells just aren't discounted enough. I want them even cheaper. Affinity for artifacts and a merge just isn't enough. Well, fear not, dear viewer, as this artifact creature from 5th Dawn has you covered. Mycosynth Golem. It itself has affinity for artifacts even without the commander in play, but it also gives our artifact creatures affinity for artifacts. Now you may be wondering what happens with 2 instances of affinity. Well, great news, everyone! They do indeed stack. That means that when Mycosynth Golem and Sammy are on the field at the same time, your artifact creatures have affinity for artifacts times 2. Your artifact lands are now worth 3 mana. Oh my goodness! That Lotus Petal is now just a full-on Black Lotus. Spells are so absurdly cheap that you should be able to cast as many as you want. The fun doesn't stop there. With all this affinity talk, you maybe forgot that Sammy also has double strike and vigilance? With the Sigarda's aid on the battlefield, every attack with Sammy becomes a lethal threat due to being able to cast and equip our equipments at instant speed. Those equipments being discounted and likely free due to Sammy's ability and Sammy having double strike. Choose not to block Sammy? Well, I choose to cast a free instant speed Colossus Hammer to deal 28 commander damage to you. Bam! Or maybe I'll just equip an instant speed free Quietus Spike to take away half your life twice. Sorry, shoulda blocked Sammy. And this just scratches the surface of all the absurdly powerful things you can do with Sammy, and clearly cements it as the #1 best new commander from Edge of Eternities. I am just so excited for Edge of Eternities. The space between the planes is something that Magic the Gathering has hinted at for a long time, but this is the first time we've ever actually seen what lies beyond and between the planes that we've come to love. And though one day all light in the universe may get sucked into the black hole at the center of everything, until then, we get to play Magic in space. So is the end of everything really that scary? If you're going to a pre-release, you can check out our pre-release guide to Edge of Eternities here, or just watch us pre-release ourselves in our pre-release episode of Shuffle Up and Play. Both those videos are linked in this video's description. And thank you once again to Wizards of the Coast for sponsoring and allowing us to have an uninterrupted episode where we got right to the point and now, right to the end. Thank you.